what actually happens when you're convicted of a felony? The very first thing that happens when you're convicted of a felony is you lose all of your rights, which may not matter to you at the time. And when I was 18 years old catching my first felony conviction, it certainly did not matter to me. And maybe that was because I was too young to care. I'm now about to be 42 years old, unk in this prison genre, angry grandpa of this prison genre. When I was 18 years old, I didn't care about the fact that I lost all of my rights immediately upon the judge saying guilty, and I was then labeled as a convicted felon. Those rights that you lose, if you don't know, are the right to bear arms. You lose your Second Amendment right off rip. You are not going to ever be able to get a legal firearm unless you get your firearm rights restored, which is going to entail you first getting all of your rights restored. But the rights that you lose are the right to bear arms, the right to vote. Sorry, I actually had to look this up because the right to bear arms and the right to vote were the two that really stood out to me. The right to get a passport is one that I can't confirm nor deny, but it's one that I've certainly heard. You're not getting a passport and you're not leaving the country if you're a convicted felon who has not had their rights restored. But other rights that you lose immediately upon being convicted of a felony. It says right here, this is for the state of Virginia, the right to vote, the right to serve on a jury, which who really wants to do that? The right to run for office, which is absolutely insane, thinking about the fact that Donald Trump is a convicted felon who I personally voted for. This was my first election with my rights restored where I was actually able to vote. The right to become a notary public, and the right to carry a firearm. It also says in the U.S., you lose rights in regards to financial and contractual rights. Those rights I have learned throughout getting older and trying to start businesses and, have businesses. The right to become a contractor is a big one. To be a licensed contractor in the state of Virginia, if you're a convicted felon, you're going to have a real hard time becoming a contractor. And in some regards, you will not be able to become a contractor. In some regards, you will not be able to get bonded, which is an insurance policy of sorts that relates to an added protection layer for customers if you are a licensed contractor. Becoming a felon literally strips you of almost all right. I mean, it does strip you of all rights. It literally almost strips you of everything that a normal, upstanding member of society is able to do, and oftentimes will probably take for granted. And again, me personally at 18 years old, when I first became a convicted felon, I didn't care about any of these things. They didn't matter to me. You know what the only thing that I cared about was getting out of jail. It worked out that I would only end up serving a few months in jail and then be given indefinite probation with a minimum of 3 years that needed to be served consecutively and successfully for me to even be eligible to be let off of probation. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's talk about some other things that happen immediately when you're convicted of a felony. You are not only labeled, and that's going to be a label that you're going to have to carry everywhere. Your DNA is then taken, like literally right after you're convicted of a felony. You lose the right to not be in a national DNA database. Back when I was 18 years old, we're talking decades ago, a little bit over 2 decades ago. Jesus Christ, I'm old. But back when I was 18 and I first became a convicted felon and they took my DNA, what that entailed was me going down to the nurse's station and them drawing a vial of blood from me. My DNA was then on file. When you become a felon, you lose the right to not have your DNA stored in a national database. And what that is for is just in case your silly self goes out there and decides to commit a robbery or do some other wild stuff and you leave a hair follicle behind, they're going to be able to link that to you. You wonder why some cases go so long without being solved when there is DNA evidence, and that could potentially be because of the fact that the person who left that DNA evidence is not a convicted felon in a national database somewhere just yet. But that's a scary thing to think about, because think of you're just in the wrong place at the right time. Let's say you're at a gas station buying a Snickers bar and you leave from the gas station and the next guy goes in and robs the place. Police come and do an investigation. They find a hair follicle left behind. It's yours. You could be implicated in something you ain't even have nothing to do with. That's a scary thing to think about, and actually something that worried me quite a bit throughout the course of my life being a convicted felon. Other things that take place when you become a convicted felon is you now have to check that box on any job application you're filling out. I haven't filled out a job application since, when I got released from prison. Again, that was almost 10 years ago. Luckily for me, I became successful after prison. I was an anomaly to a certain degree to a statistic of recidivism and going right back, which a national statistic states that 30% of people who get released will go right back. I did so for a long time in my past, in and out of jail, 2 different trips to prison, but this time I finally got it right. But again, when you become a convicted felon and you're out there trying to fill out a job application, you got to now check that box that says, have you been convicted of a felony in the last 3, 5, 7, maybe even 10 or ever years? Have you ever been convicted of a felony in the last 10 years? Or have you ever been convicted of a felony ever in your lifetime? Having a felony conviction on your record is guaranteed to wipe away a few different job opportunities that you might have considered wanting to have. In fact, there aren't a whole hell of a lot of jobs that will hire you as a convicted felon. And I know what you're going to say, but Joe, there's a list of places that will hire you. Out of a whole ass country, you got a little list of places that say that they do hire convicted felons. Places such as Walmart. But let you have a felony involving money, involving the theft of something. You can go ahead and X all those type of places that were felon friendly right off of the list. They're not going to hire you unless, you do have years separated from that felony conviction. I don't want to scare you thinking that you won't ever get a job being a convicted felon, but it sure makes it a lot more difficult. I'll never forget when I was released from prison, the first job application I went and filled out was at a fish packing house. It was nothing but Hispanic folks working there. I went in there not knowing how to use a smartphone and literally with a bunch of little sticky pad notes, basically stuck all over me, but really just stuck to a notebook that I had for references and, phone numbers. And I went into there, had to check that box. Have you been convicted of a felony? Yes, but I've served my time and I've made changes. And I got to the part that asked for job experience references. And I froze up. I'd been gone for 7 years. How was it going to be 2015? I'm sitting here trying to fill out a job application, and the last job reference that I could even list was from 2007. I literally had to put, hey, I've been locked up for 7 years, but give me a chance. I will show you that I am a worthwhile hire. Never heard from them people. I told them I was even willing to go work for like $7 an hour. This was back before they raised minimum wage here in the state of Virginia. I said I'd do it for minimum wage. Man, them people ain't called me at all. So yeah, become a convicted felon if you want to. Certain felony convictions will add another layer of complexity to things you're not going to be able to do. Just like I mentioned with money crimes and theft charges, those felon-friendly jobs get wiped off the list. Have you a drug sale conviction like yours truly did? That's going to make a few other things become not available to you. Interesting, those things are food stamps. That's right. You can't apply for government assistance as a convicted felon who's been convicted, maybe recently or something like that, of a drug possession with intent to distribute charge. Take it from me, I should know. Now, they may have changed this, but back when I came home from prison in 2015, I surely was calling social services trying to get me some food stamps. You know what's crazy about this? Vine was actually still available. I posted this on Vine. Hey, I'm a convicted felon. I can't get food stamps because I've got a drug sale charge. Darn it. Vine's no longer here. I wish I could still have those videos. It would be crazy to show. Yep, couldn't get food stamps because I was a convicted felon of a drug sale nature. And also because of that same exact charge, I could not go get an apartment in my name. Nobody was going to approve me on an apartment application as a convicted felon with a drug sale charge. Interesting to note about that. I've actually heard that people with the PDF charges have a better chance at both of those two things that I just mentioned, food stamps and also getting a lease. Wild to think. I don't know about the lease thing though, but I think the food stamp thing is actually valid, which is crazy. Another thing that's going to happen when you become a convicted felon is 9 times out of 10, you're either going to have served some time and or ended up on probation and parole. And because of that, you're going to definitely deal with barriers in relation to traveling. You're not going to be able to go where you want to when you want to go there without having to first ask somebody's permission. Can you imagine being a whole ass grown man? Having to ask your probation officer, aka babysitter, for permission to travel and them then telling you, well, go ahead and fill out this ticket and I'll send it up the chain to my boss and see if they approve it. Crazy thing to note right there. Forget leaving the country. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get a passport till you get your rights restored. I've literally just gotten my rights restored within the last 4 years. Again, this was the first time that I had an opportunity to vote, and what a powerful thing that felt like, especially after so long in my life when it just didn't matter. I've never left the country. The farthest that I've ever been is Key West, Florida, 50 miles separated from Cuba, standing at the water's edge at Key West, feeling like this is the closest I'm ever going to come to leaving this country. I've heard that there's barriers at customs when, you are traveling. If you are, in fact, allowed to do so, get that passport, get on that plane. I've heard that if you go to places like the UK, if you've been convicted of a felony within like the last 20 years, there's a good possibility they won't let you in, and let it be a drug possession with intent to distribute charge. You might be getting apprehended in London. And that's a scary thing to think about. Another thing that happens when you become a convicted felon, the police know that shit. Let you get pulled over, get your name ran. Not only do they know if you're a convicted felon, they're going to know if you're on probation and parole. That shit's in their little database. And here's the other kicker. Let you get pulled over. You're on probation. You get pulled over for speed and you're going 35 and a 25. The cop pulls you over. He runs your name. He sees that you're on probation. He gives you a warning. Guess what? Your probation officer is already notified of the fact that you've had a police encounter, that you were stopped. Because as soon as your name gets ran in the police database, that shit goes right to probation. Take it from me, I should know. I've gone through it. You could end up in a situation on felony probation or parole, which is referred to as indefinite. This is like basically being told that you're going to be on probation for the rest of your life, or you could be, especially if you don't tighten up and fly right and complete whatever time that they put over your head. You could be on indefinite probation, but be given X number of years suspended. And that suspended time then becomes time that is held over your head. So if you go to court for a felony conviction, get found guilty, they sentence you to 15 years in prison, suspend all of it. God, I don't know where they would do that at. And then put you on indefinite probation. That means that if you ever violate that probation before you successfully complete it, you could have been on that probation for 11 months doing everything you were supposed to be doing. And they were getting ready to let you off at the 12-month mark. But right then and there, you catch a charge, something minute, a reckless driving charge, a DUI. Not only you got to worry about the time that you're going to get for that conviction, for that particular charge, you then have to go to court for a whole nother charge, which is going to be that probation violation. And they can give you anything upwards. They can give you the entire 15 years that was suspended and put over your head if they want to. I remember cases back when I was serving time, especially back when I was younger. When I was 18, having a felony conviction and being on probation with time over your head was Russian roulette. I remember times when dudes brought back simple violations for dirty urines. That was their charge. That was their violation. Having 15 years over their head. First violation, getting 5 years for a dirty urine. The fact of the matter is, having a felony conviction can very likely ruin your life. It will absolutely impede you from doing a lot of things that most all other normal Americans can do. I highly encourage you to not go that route, because when you do, if you do, it will be the hardest thing ever for you trying to get your rights restored and to get out from underneath of that dark cloud that will forever loom over you that is known as a felony conviction. Folks, that's all. I just wanted to share this with you. Hope you found this information to be useful and interesting, probably a little scary as well. Hey, look, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did so, please leave a like and a comment on this, letting me know exactly what you thought about this. And as always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day.